our 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football.
Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Nearly 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 17th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 23 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Brian Eikenberry and Andy Hall.
Winning championships is our business, and business is good. Thanks for checking us out. Andy Hall, joined as I am by my co-host Brian Eikenberry, and we're being heard in new places this week as we found a home on the all-new 1350 ESPN radio in Des Moines. How exciting is that, Brian?
This is actually super motivating, and I cannot wait to get started, to be heard in all corners of this great state, and just really get out there and help a lot of people win some championships.
As always, our show is available on iTunes and Stitcher prior to Thursday Night Football, making sure we're there before you set your lineup and potentially do something crazy. Wouldn't want that. A lot to get to in a short amount of time, including regular features, the pop quiz, bargain bin, and more. All the Week 3 matchups as well. But first, some headlines I want to rip through, get you all caught up on all the major fantasy-relevant happenings in the NFL, beginning with Tony Romo. Tony Romo has a broken clavicle. He is out until at least late November, possibly early December. The Cowboys have signed Matt Castle as a backup. He will eventually, sounds like, compete for the starting gig with Brandon Weeden. For now, Kellen Moore will be Weeden's backup on Sunday. Jimmy Graham, quote, hates his role in the Seattle offense. Brian, this is something I want to talk about really quickly. It's obvious that Seattle has no idea what to do with Jimmy.
It was heartbreaking to hear him say those words from someone. Myself expected him to get a lot of touchdowns this year. I was thinking 10 to 15 touchdowns for this guy. He's going to steal them away from Lynch owners. And watching these games, I am dumbfounded at how the offense is not including him in the red zone. It's mind-boggling.
The same brilliant minds that brought you the slant in the Super Bowl last year are bringing you Jimmy Graham as a blocking tight end. I have no idea what that's about, but apparently Jimmy is voicing his concerns at this point to many of his teammates, and we'll see if that changes the tune of some of the coordinators that are calling the shots. Brian Quick is physically able to play, according to Rams head coach Jeff Fisher. Remember, this goes back to last season when Quick got injured and went under the knife, had some surgery. So Quick could be back in lineup this week. Eddie Lacy, he'll test his ankle on Thursday before course of action is determined for the Green Bay Packers. It is possible he could see some action this weekend. I believe it'll be limited. You'll probably see an awful lot more of James Starks. Eric Decker considered day-to-day, which is surprising. He had that PCL injury. He may be ready for action by Sunday. We shall see. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, we know he'll be out a while. He has a strained shoulder. Likely he'll miss 4 to 6 weeks. Victor Cruz, running and participating in agility drills. He should be back by week 4, according to the Giants coaching staff. So those of you that spent a draft pick on him and have been waiting ever so patiently, you will have your Victor Cruz back, sounds like, by next week. Drew Brees avoided a torn rotator cuff. He's rehabbing this week. He could be good to go for this weekend's game. Get off my lawn, Arians. Remember, Bruce Arians, going back in older episodes of the 515 Fantasy Football Show, no longer referring to Bruce Arians as Bruce Arians. He is now Get Off My Lawn, Arians. He's confirmed rookie David Johnson's role will continue to expand week to week, which is notable for those that have spent a waiver pick or happen to draft the talented rookie. Jason Witten, he is a banged-up character. He's got 2 sprained ankles and a sprained knee. No sure thing for week 3, but if you were to ask Jason, he says he's good to go. No surprise there, Brian. He's a tough guy.
He hasn't missed a game since 2006.
Wow. That's incredible at his position. Wow. I didn't realize that. Moving on with more headlines. Tevin Coleman expected to miss at least 2 games with a rib injury. That means it's Devontae Freeman time in Atlanta. Jay Cutler. Some reports saying he's expected to miss at least 2 games with a hamstring injury. Then again, if you ask the Bears coaching staff, he might be playing this weekend. I have no idea what to think there, but I wouldn't be starting them anyway. They haven't looked that good. DeAndre Hopkins may be out week 3, which is big news. He's in NFL's concussion protocols. This was kind of an under-the-radar story that a lot missed over the weekend, and apparently he suffered this concussion in the game on Sunday. DeMarco Murray left practice on Wednesday. He'll have an MRI done in his injured hamstring, which is big news. Not that he's really been performing thus far, but still notable. Lamar Miller missed practice on Wednesday. He's day-to-day with an ankle injury. He might not play. They signed Jonas Gray from their practice squad, so he might actually see some time if Lamar Miller can't go. Josh McCown will start Sunday for the Browns. It is not Johnny football time any longer in Cleveland, much to the chagrin of that fan base. And finally, Ladarius Green suffered his second concussion in just 11 days on Sunday. He is most definitely not going to play this weekend against the Vikings. Those are your headlines. How about we start jumping into these matchups, Brian? I'm going to begin with, you get the Thursday night honors this week, don't you?
Let's kick off week number 3 with a good old-fashioned NFC East smash mouth, hit them hard, and just absolutely obliterate. Washington at the Giants. Washington rolls into the Big Apple, 1 game up on the Giants, and it's quite a surprising situation myself. The Redskins have dual rushers now, at least they did last week. Alfred Morris is going to get a B- here, and Matt Jones, if you nabbed him like everybody else did off the waiver wire, give him a C+. These should be higher grades, but the Giants have the number 3 rush defense through 2 games. Kirk Cousins going to get a B- here, and may not be a bad option if he gets it figured out because the Giants' poorest defense, ranking number 31st in the league. Jordan Reed gets a B. Pierre Garçon gets a B as well. Should be a good scoring game. Eli is looking to get the ball rolling against Washington defense that ranks number 2 against the pass. That statistic blew me away. So bad news for Eli, but I believe those passing statistics are a fluke. B for Eli as his touchdowns are low, but he doesn't have any interceptions, so he's not costing you points either. Odell Beckham Jr. is getting a B here because he is the only wide receiver with more than 5 catches on the Giants roster right now. Quite surprising. Tight end Larry Donnell, he's going to catch a few balls, C for him. And Shane Vereen, surprising here, 12 receptions for 122 yards so far. Something to watch for as Rashad Jennings is beginning to slip a little. His production after making his comment being told not to score looked like the play calling's being a little bit affected. Maybe he's starting to make some people upset. So Rashad's going to get a B-. Never know how that's going to shake out. The first kicker who's ever going to make my matchup breakdown, Josh Brown. He already has 6 field goals and 1 from beyond 50. B+. Kickers are always good options in a stalling offense inside the 20.
Kickers' lives matter, Brian. And, Brown's a guy you can probably grab off your waiver wire, so that's a good pick there. My first matchup is Atlanta at Dallas. We'll begin on the Falcons side of the ball where Matt Ryan will get an A grade, while Dallas's defense looks improved from their 2014 counterpart. At least thus far, they have yet to face a quarterback like Ryan who has several elite options in the passing game. So an A for Ryan, a B for Devontae Freeman. He'll handle the bulk of the snaps in the Atlanta backfield with Coleman out, as I mentioned in headlines. He's done nothing shockingly impressive yet, but did find the end zone last week. He'll have the volume necessary to consider him in your starting lineup. For receivers, Julio Jones, of course, gets an A, absolute stud. You'd never consider sitting him anyway. Leonard Hankerson is a B grade for me. He's seen a nice steady uptick in targets since the start of the season. Feels as if he's the new Roddy White in this offense, so I'm giving him a B. Roddy White himself gets a C+. He was ignored completely last week, and though I'm not writing him off just yet, it's beginning to feel as though Hankerson has surpassed him on the depth chart and through the eyes of Matt Ryan. I wouldn't mess with Jacob Tamme as the tight end. Need to see more from him before I endorse plugging him into your lineup. As far as Dallas goes, Brandon Weeden is your starting quarterback. He gets a C. The Falcons are a middle-of-the-road defense against the pass. But like Dallas, also seem to be improving under first-year head coach Dan Quinn, who did wonders with the Seahawks as their former D coordinator. The Cowboys, they'll attempt to control the clock by establishing their running game. Whedon, he'll make the throws he needs to, but don't expect him to light up the box score on Sunday. Running backs, Joseph Randle gets an A-. Atlanta, they have not improved much in run defense. They were ranked 31st in 2014, and through 2 games this season, they're dead last. With Romo and Bryant out, Witten not a sure thing with his own assortment of injuries. Look for Dallas to run the ball as much as humanly possible. Randall should be the main benefactor. C+ for Darren McFadden. He'll get his touches, mainly giving Randall a breather when he needs it. He's got the potential to make something happen against the soft Falcons run defense, but I think the better start here will be Randall. And Lance Dunbar, going to throw him in the mix as well. He gets a C, mainly a PPR play for Dunbar. He's the primary pass-catching back for the Dallas offense. He could benefit from a backup quarterback needing to check down from time to time. As far as the receivers go, Terrence Williams, I'll give him a B. With a banged-up Witten, I expect Williams to be one of Whedon's main targets on Sunday. He caught a nice touchdown pass late from the backup in last week's game. Cole Beasley gets a C+. If you like Julian Edelman, you might consider Beasley in your flex this week. He works the underneath and intermediate crossing routes that Whedon may be looking for. Jason Witten, if he does play, gets a B+. Despite multiple injury concerns, I wouldn't sit him if he's active. On to the next matchup, Mr. Bryan.
Indianapolis heads to Tennessee, which 3 weeks ago would have sounded like an absolute feast for Luck, but I'm not so sure now after through 2 weeks. He's been struggling to successfully push the ball, and now he has 5 interceptions already. 5 interceptions through Luck. That's 10 points he's cost you so far. So it's probably not going to get better against Tennessee, who's the 3rd-ranked pass defense. So if you think about the preseason and then you think about reality now, the Colts here, I think they're really going to struggle again with their offensive line issues. So a B- for Andrew Luck here until he can reduce his turnovers and pick up his yards per game higher than 250. He's just not going to get a higher grade out of me. T.Y. Hilton's going to get a B. Even when injured, he's still getting yards like he was last week. Moncrief is getting a B. He's the only receiver with a touchdown. And Andre Johnson is getting a D for do not bother. He is just slow, he is old, and we all thought he was going to make some magic and he was going to revive that career in Indianapolis, and it's just not happening. You can put Frank Gore in that same category. Through 2 games, he has 88 yards, and that's just not working out. Things are going down for Frank Gore. I know we're not supposed to overreact to week 1, but what about week 2? I definitely think we can overreact to the Colts situation. No tight end fantasy value here. Would I like to own anyone on the Colts? Yes. IDP alert. If your league has an IDP alert, look out for DeQuell Jackson. He already has 18 tackles and a fumble recovery, so keep your eye out for him in the IDPs. Tennessee, Mariota, he's showing week 1 was not a fluke. He's got great accuracy. 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I'm giving him an A for all-star here. We see that he's showing who he can be, and he just keeps on going and going and going. You got to think the Buccaneers are really kicking themselves passing over him. Kendall Wright, you can put him back in your lineup. He's going to get the B start here. Justin Hunter is going to get a B. Tight end Anthony Fasano, a B+ out of him, as I expect him to snag another TD and 50 yards against the Colts. Even though the Colts have the 13th ranked pass defense, it's because nobody's had to pass. They can just keep rushing and rushing and rushing because Indies just keep turning the ball over, whether it's Gord just running and fumbling the ball or Andrew Luck throwing those interceptions. Bishop Sankey, he fell in quite of the drafts out there based off of last year's performance, but he is getting all of the carries there, and he should have a good day against the Colts run defense, so give Bishop Sankey a B+.
I like Fasano a lot as a backup to Delaney Walker, who's dealing with some wrist issues. I do want to add a caveat there that I would replace that B+ to Delaney Walker if indeed he does end up playing this weekend. It's not a sure bet, but he is practicing, so that's notable. Moving on to my next matchup, Oakland at Cleveland. Start on the Raiders side of the ball with quarterback Derek Carr. He gets a B here. He put up respectable numbers against the Browns in Cleveland last year, coming off arguably the best showing of his career thus far in last week's upset over Baltimore. He's a sneaky good start this week if you need him. As far as the running game goes, Latavius Murray is the only one to talk about here. B+. Cleveland been very friendly to opposing running backs thus far this season, giving up an average of about 24.5 points per game to the position in standard scoring leagues. Murray, with no real competition for significant touches, he should be a good start. As far as the receivers go, Amari Cooper is a B+. In last year's matchup, Oakland's number one wide receiver, Andre Holmes, had 69 yards receiving and a touchdown against the Browns. Cooper's got the same opportunity to match those numbers and then some against a very average pass defense. One caveat to that, Joe Hayden likely will have him in coverage. Joe Hayden is a very good corner, but he's been shown to be beatable. Michael Crabtree gets a B, likely draws coverage from Tremont Williams on the other side of the field. Crabtree definitely has the potential to be a very solid flex start this week. And that's about it for the Raiders. As far as the Browns go, Josh McCown is your starter. He gets a C start from me. Not a great start. He's named the starter, and I'm not loving his chances despite the emergence of Travis Benjamin as a real downfield threat in the passing game. I think Josh needs to get back in the game, and it might take him this one before he finally warms up. As far as the running game goes, Isaiah Crowell gets a B+. If Cleveland has been very friendly to opposing running backs, Brian, Oakland has been downright gropey. Yes, I said gropey. They're currently ranked 31st against the run, and with the Crow coming off his best showing of the season in Week 2, I think he'll get the lion's share of the carries and decent opportunities to score touchdowns. Duke Johnson gets a C. He'll eventually become an elite pass-catching back, in my opinion, but he's still a rookie. He hasn't proved he deserves more time on the field as of yet. As far as the receivers go, Travis Benjamin gets a B- from me. Oakland has been relatively stingy against opposing wide receivers through 2 weeks. Benjamin has been electric early on, but because of the quarterback switch, again, I temper my expectations for him this week. And tight end Gary Barnidge, I want to mention. Not a guy that I would necessarily want to start, but he's definitely got some sleeper potential. He does need to prove it before anyone should consider plugging him in. But Gary Barnidge, a name to remember, and that's it for that matchup.
Cincinnati at Baltimore. Gio threw up some huge numbers on Jeremy Hill's fumbles, but that's only temporary, so don't get caught up in last week's stat line. Gio's going to get a C. He's going to be the backup to Jeremy Hill. Jeremy Hill is going to get a B start here. If he holds on to the ball, he's holding on to his job. They're not going to split carries, so don't get caught up with last week's performance. That was just to teach Jeremy Hill a lesson and let him know that fumbles are not tolerated. So we're going to assume he learned from that benching, and he's going to have a robo grip on the ball there. So look for Jeremy Hill to put up some numbers here against Baltimore. Dalton's having a decent couple of weeks here. 0 interceptions for Andy Dalton and 5 touchdowns going against the average Ravens pass defense. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Dalton's burnt me over the last year or two. I'm going to give him a B+ this week. He and A.J. Green are showing more of the chemistry and promise in that back corner of the end zone. He was floating him in there pretty good. So A.J.'s going to get a B. Sanu's going to get a C. Marvin Jones will look to be stealing some valuable passes from Sanu. So watch for Marvin Jones to be creeping up there. He's still going to get a C+, but look for him to be making some advances up that depth chart. Can you guess who the Bengals' best pass catcher is right now? Tyler Eifert, 153 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Tyler Eifert gets an A in the tight end position. That's pretty staggering. If you look at the receivers and then you look who the best receiver is, it's the tight end with 153 and 3 touchdowns. Baltimore, it's a team that needs to get things figured out. They're sitting 0-2 right now. No one needs to get it more started than Justin Forsett. For whatever reason, he needs to prove that last year was not his swan song. His production is probably more a sign of the play calling and kind of what's going on with the rest of the team and the defense. But let's reach out to the old man here. Forsett's going to get a B. Flacco is Flacco. He's going to get 250 yards and a touchdown. So his norm, that's it. C+. There's no real fantasy value out of starting Flacco this week. Steve Smith, on the other hand, his main receiver is going to get a B+. He's showing why he's still worthy of fighting for those catches. He's scrappy, and he is not afraid to get physical against the secondary, so he's always going to be catching those passes. Someone to watch for, tight end Crockett Gilmore. I'm not buying this just yet. He's going to get a B-, but he's been throwing up some absolutely gaudy numbers at the tight end position for him as well. 7 catches on 10 targets, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. So some nice tight end value here out of this matchup. Those Flacco TDs got to go somewhere. He's worth a flyer. So more on him later. There are no other Ravens worthy of fantasy value, and that is shockingly true here.
Moving on, Jacksonville at New England will begin on the Jags side of the ball with quarterback Blake Bortles, who gets a B here. Likely be playing from behind all game, which means lots of attempts. New England's defense through 2 games is by no means a dominant force against opposing quarterbacks. I think Bortles racks up decent numbers despite what could be an ugly final score. As far as the runner goes, TJ Yeldon, about the only one to have a conversation about. He gets a B-. New England giving up just over 20 points to the running back position per game thus far this season. That's a lot. Yeldon is experiencing some growing pains as a rookie, but he should find some room to run as long as the team doesn't fall so far behind that they abandon the running game, and that is a very real possibility. As far as the receivers go, Allen Robinson, he gets a B+. Both Robert Woods and Sammy Watkins found the end zone against the Pats last weekend. Antonio Brown, of course, in Week 1 for Pittsburgh. As Jacksonville's number 1 wide receiver, I like Robinson this week, no matter if he's scoring early on or in garbage time. Doesn't matter to you. Allen Hurns will get a C+ from me. Mainly a home run threat, Hurns has shown some ability as a possession guy as well. 2 under the radar to consider in your starting lineup, though, unless you're desperate. As far as the Patriots go, who aren't you starting in this game? Tom Brady gets an A. History has proven 2 things, Brian. Number 1, that Tom Brady is matchup proof, and people like myself learned our lesson after what he did to Buffalo last week on the road.
Yes, you did.
And 2, even if the Pats are up big, Brady will continue to throw. Big day in store for him this weekend. As far as the running backs go, Dion Lewis will get a B grade from me. Your guess is as good as mine as far as how the touches will break down for New England week to week, but judging solely on his first 2 weeks of action, Dion Lewis is a potentially great start here if this week's scheme includes a heavy dose of him, and that's a big if. LeGarrette Blount, I'll give a C+ to. This matchup strikes me as more of a ground and pound friendly type of matchup, which benefits Blount. Could the script be flipped by Belichick and company this week? Could Dion Lewis end up riding the pine more often than not? I have no idea, but I'm taking a wild guess at it, and we'll see what happens. Julian Edelman gets an A, having himself a big year through the first 2 weeks. Edelman gets more targets and receptions than anyone else on the team. This should not change going forward. Aaron Dobson's working himself more and more into the scheme of things. I do give him a C here. I'm starting to see significant field time alongside Danny Amendola. Hasn't done much as of yet. Same with Amendola. But may eventually develop into a fantasy find if he can avoid the drops, and that's been his problem in the past. Rob Gronkowski wraps up this matchup. He gets an A. You're definitely not sitting him.
Saints at Carolina. Saints are another team that is not in a good place right now. Drew Brees, if he starts, and that's a big if, you're going to have to watch the injury reports all week long here, but Drew Brees is going to get a B- if he plays. Reasoning, chemistry's off with his receivers. Something's going on, and he's going up against a great Panthers defense that's in the top 10 in both rushing and passing, making this a bad day for Brees. He's missing Jimmy Graham, obviously, so Brees is getting that B-. Ingram's going to get a C+, and all of the wide receivers, Cooks, Coleman, and Colston, they're all getting B-. And this is something we've talked about for weeks now. What is going on? This receiver core, this quarterback, they're rushing. Everything looks to be on paper a cohesive unit going forward that should be in A's and B+, but it's just not a good situation. So if you've got some matchup questions and it's between a Saints player and somebody else, I'm probably leaning with somebody else here this week. So it's just not a good situation. Ingram and Spiller, they're both getting those C's. It's just not a good week to be starting any Saints. With all the talk, you're probably going to think, how is Carolina winning games and how are they going to beat the Saints here? Well, Andy's bargain bin last week coming through in the clutch and making waves on that waiver wire as everyone who dropped Cam Newton is now picking him right back up for what he's doing with his legs. Cam's going to get a B+ here against a subpar Saints D that loves to commit huge penalties in the worst time, getting him into the red zone and picking up those touchdowns. Not so much on the yardage, but touchdowns are money here in fantasy football, so that's why Cam's getting his B+. By the way, Cam Newton also has 100 yards rushing and is averaging 4.6 yards per attempt. So that's something you're going to want to watch out for if you are a Jonathan Stewart owner. He's going to play a good role here, but he's being held out of that end zone. A B for Jonathan Stewart. I'm going to expect him to sneak in for 6 this Sunday because he's got to get one here sooner or later. Third week in, he's got a good shot at doing against this Saints defense. Pass catching on the other side of the ball for the Panthers is bad news. There is not a single pass catcher on the Panthers who has over 100 yards, and not one of them has more than one touchdown. Just what is going on here? Terrible, terrible, terrible. So take it for what it's worth, but if you're going to start one of these guys, be it Ted Ginn, Olsen, Funchess, Brown, nothing is reliable, and that's what this game was all about. I would not start any wide receiver out of this matchup, and that's really tough to say, especially on the Saints side of the ball.
Going to rip through one more matchup before the ever-popular pop quiz segment. I hope you're ready for that, Brian. Philadelphia at the New York Jets is what I've got next. Sam Bradford gets a C. The Jets have not been friendly to opposing quarterbacks, not at all. They're currently ranked third against the position and avoided a potentially bad spot when Antonio Cromartie was able to play last week following an ugly-looking injury in Week 1. Bradford may have a prayer or two answered in this one, but I wouldn't bet on it. As far as the running backs go, DeMarco Murray, we mentioned him a bit ago. I don't even think he'll play this weekend. We shall see. He's having an MRI done tomorrow, which would put Darren Sproles and Ryan Matthews firmly on your radar. Ryan Matthews, I would give a B-, no better than. He's facing a tough Jets defense this week, and they haven't been very friendly to the running back position either. Darren Sproles, I'll also give a B- to. He's a pass-catching back, and he might be the type that could get out in space and create some yardage opportunities against this Jets defense. As far as the receivers go, Jordan Matthews will also get a B-. The only receiver I'd trust anywhere near a starting lineup right now on the Philly squad. Matthews always has the potential to get behind a defense and score touchdowns. I'm just not sure this will be the week he will do that. And Zach Ertz will get a B. 7 targets in each of his first 2 games. Ertz, he should be getting some more looks. I think those will increase as we move on. With the Jets, Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know I love some Fitz magic. He gets a B-. Would have him ranked higher if Decker hadn't exited Week 2 with what appears to be a PCL strain. We'll see what happens with that. He might play this week. It's a decent matchup. He's still got Marshall to rely on the passing game, but you probably have a better option this week, chances are. The running game, Chris Ivory gets a B+. Should find room to run against an average Philly D. The Jets will likely want to control the clock in this one and keep time of possession in favor of them. Ivory is the guy they will lean on. As far as receivers go, Brandon Marshall gets a B+. Would be a higher grade if Decker hadn't gotten hurt last week. If Decker does play, I might even lean toward Brandon Marshall getting an A or an A- in this one. You saw what he did last weekend. I think that is exactly what Brandon Marshall brings to the table for these Jets. Makes them look like a completely different offense. And again, we'll keep a close eye on what happens with Eric Decker. But if he does end up playing, and it'll be granted at less than 100%, I would probably give him a solid B grade. That is that. Still to come, the rest of the matchups, bargain bin picks, and more. You're enjoying the 515 Fantasy Football Show, which you can find weekly on iTunes, Stitcher, and new this week on 1350 ESPN Radio here in Des Moines. I'm Andy Hall. My co-host is Brian Eikenberry. Nearly 40 years of fantasy dominance between the two of us. You're in the business of winning a championship. This is the show that'll help get you there. Find us on Facebook and on Twitter at 515 Fantasy. Time for the pop quiz. 3 questions that may make Brian's head explode. Shall we, Brian?
I guess it's that time to make me look like an idiot and trick me. And just trick me over and over 3 times full.
Question 1. What's the correct course of action for Tony Romo owners with limited bench and no IR option?
Well, I think the best course of action, if you're a Romo owner, just get out of Dodge, cut him, drop him. Don't even worry about him coming back. If you're looking at this thing in the course of weeks, he's going to come back the last 2-3 weeks of your fantasy season, potentially, and it's not even going to be worth holding on to that roster spot. Dump him for a little bit, experiment with some different flavors. You can pick him back up in a couple of more weeks to bring him back up. I would stay tuned for the bargain bin on who I would fill that QB spot with, but for right now, you've got some pretty cheap options out there that are going to pick him up and come in and fill that spot.
The correct answer is drop him outright. You're absolutely correct. He won't return until late November, early December, best case scenario. And his playoff schedule, by the way, weeks 1 and 2, that'd be the fantasy playoffs against the Jets and the Bills. Not exactly fantasy friendly. So I say just get rid of him now. Question 2. We're through week 2 of the NFL regular season, Brian, and already more extra point attempts have been missed than all of last season. Is the fantasy kicker about to be jettisoned by the majority of leagues, yes or no?
No, I don't think so. I think what you're going to see out of the majority of fantasy leagues, and something one of my leagues that I commish has adopted, is removing the penalty for missed kicks.
They shouldn't have that anyway. That's a terrible rule.
It's a terrible rule, but it's still there, and it makes you draft around it. The kicker's still going to be there. The field goals are huge. So to get rid of that extra point, I don't draft kickers based off of extra point attempts. I draft kickers based off of how many field goals and their mediocre offenses.
The correct answer: it has already begun in some leagues. And depending on how many more kickers struggle with this adjustment and how many coaches ultimately just decide to go for 2 more often than not, it's a very distinct possibility, my friend. And I agree with you, kickers are among the highest scorers in fantasy year to year. But you could just as easily get rid of a position like that where there's not much differentiation between all of the guys. Question 3. Through 2 weeks, who has been the biggest fantasy bust thus far?
It's got to be DeMarco Murray. I mean, if you think about what he did last year compared to his stats before, even disregarding the injury again, what he has done through 2 games, it is just absolute heartbreak to burn your first pick on DeMarco Murray and having the third roster spot on some teams, the third running back on some teams, outscoring DeMarco Murray. Ridiculous.
The correct answer, and there are lots of options here, Brian: Des Bryant, C.J. Anderson, DeMarco Murray. My answer, however, is Adrian Peterson. His ADP was 1.1 or 1.2 for the most part. He has 165 yards rushing, 79 yards receiving, and 0 TDs. And it's not as if he hasn't had chances. Thus far, my answer for biggest bust through 2 weeks, Adrian Peterson. I think things will change, but that's where we're at.
I think things will change only if they stop lining him up in the shotgun. He just looks so uncomfortable coming out of that. It makes him hesitate trying to hit that hole. I'll give you a little bit of dap on that one.
Let's jump back into Week 3 matchups, beginning with San Diego at Minnesota, shall we? Phillip Rivers gets a B from me. Last week's stat line against Cincy, likely in the ballpark of what to expect from Rivers this week in Minnesota. I'm thinking 270 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 or 2 turnovers. That's standard Phillip Rivers stuff. As far as the running game goes, Danny Woodhead gets a B. After getting gashed by Carlos Hyde and the Niners in Week 1, Minnesota kind of overcorrected. They held Lions running backs to virtually nothing on the ground. I don't expect Woodhead to accomplish much between the tackles per se, but he may pile up catches and yards in the passing game. And look out, if the Chargers get inside that 5-yard line, Woodhead may be one of the most consistent goal line backs in the league, which is really sounds weird to say that, but that is the case. Melvin Gordon gets a B-. He won't have the success he did in Week 2 when he averaged 5.5 yards per carry against those Bengals. The Vikings tend to be very tough in the middle. I'm not sure Gordon has the speed to get outside and have a breakout game here, so B-. The receivers, Stevie Johnson gets a B-. Dude is a physical specimen. He's been great through the first 2 weeks. He certainly seems to have Rivers' attention in the passing game. He'll draw coverage from Xavier Rhodes on Sunday, which is a really tough matchup, but I could see him getting loose once or twice. I also think that a decent start this week is Keenan Allen. I give Keenan Allen a solid B here. It all depends on who Xavier Rhodes ends up on. My gut says it could be Stevie Johnson. But if it ends up being Keenan Allen, it could be a slightly tougher day for him. I think Rhodes is a vastly underrated talent in terms of pass coverage. Malcolm Floyd is kind of an afterthought in this offense. I give him a C start, though. Guessing Terrence Newman might lock up with him on Sunday, which will result in very average stats when the clock hits zeros. As far as tight ends go, there's really not much to see here now that the Ladarius Green news has been made public. So we move on to the Minnesota side of the ball, and Teddy Bridgewater, who gets a B-. Should be a run-heavy game plan for the Vikings, much like last week when they found success against Detroit. Bridgewater, he'll continue to make the throws he needs to and avoid turnovers for the most part, but this isn't a great matchup for fantasy purposes. Adrian Peterson, we just mentioned as my bust of the year pick. This is an A game for him. I'm calling it. Adrian will reach the end zone for the first time this season in this game. Maybe I'm a little nostalgic here, Brian, but I can't help but remember fondly his nearly 300-yard performance against San Diego a few years ago and think he could finally put together a complete game this Sunday. It might not be 300 yards, but it could be very good. As far as the pass catchers go, Mike Wallace gets a C+. Probably Bridgewater's best option downfield. Wallace's success or failure on Sunday largely depends on whether or not Eric Weddle is on him in coverage and how much. Weddle is a stud. Charles Johnson gets a C. We've seen what he's capable of, just not in 2015 as of yet. The Vikings passing game, they've taken a backseat to Adrian Peterson. Surprise, surprise. And Kyle Rudolph, I'll give him a B. Always a red zone threat. Rudolph may not do much between the 20s, but he makes up for it when targeted in the passing game when they are down deep. On to your next matchup, sir.
Buccaneers at the Texans. And let me just ask you a side question here real quick. Do you think the Buccaneers fly across the Gulf of Mexico, or do you think they get on a bunch of buses and just cruise around? Because by the time you get through security and loading up and waiting for that, you'd probably already be there in a bus. Anyways.
My answer to that is I think they probably fly, Brian.
Hey, you never know. So, Jameis Winston, meet J.J. Watt. Congratulations. You're about to get slapped down on the welcome mat. Winston is a no start for obvious reasons, but if you are someone who has him starting, you obviously need our help, so stay listening. Someone's got to catch some of the ball, so Vincent Jackson, he's a reliable B here. He showed it last week. Mike Evans hopefully is going to get his first catch this week, but let's hope he's not just playing the role of a decoy again as he was last week, which really, I think that did more damage than good. There's nothing to benefit out there. They did it. Lions did it with Calvin Johnson last year. Did not help out a situation at all. He's probably going to be sore. Let's give him a B- out of the gate and just wait and see. Everybody drafted him really high, but it's Jameis Winston, and we've seen what that's coming on. ASJ, bringing him down a notch. He's going to get a B in the tight end slot. Winston's going to be under pressure a lot. He's going to have to resort to check down, screen passes. So Dougie Fresh, he's going to be happy with that kind of a news. Houston's 25th ranked run defense paired up with Dougie Fresh's 4.1 yards per carry. He's going to have himself a good day here. Dougie Fresh getting a B+. He is the bright shining spot here on the Bucs roster for this week and this week only. Houston, on the other hand, could use someone like Dougie Fresh. There are 0 running backs you should be owning on the Houston roster, and that is not what I've stated in the past, not what I've hoped for, but that's just what's happening now. I've come to terms with it. So should you. Get rid of all the running backs active on Houston's roster right now. This is going to be a passing attack until you know who comes back. So Nate Washington, he's going to get probably the majority of the catches here. DeAndre Hopkins, you heard it in the headlines. But if he does go, both of these guys are going to get Bs or B+ here if everyone's healthy and firing on all cylinders. Can't quite pull the trigger on Nate Washington getting an A, but he is really showing that he can be that big-time receiver that they need to come in and help out. And I actually quite sneaky, too. I did not see that coming. But these two guys, they need them both on the field. They need them bad. 41% of all targets out of Houston are between Nate Washington and DeAndre Hopkins. So that's actually very dangerous. With those kind of numbers, they need to produce them results. Mallett, he could be a legitimate starter here this week against Tampa Bay. He needs to raise up his completion percentage, but Ryan Mallett, going to get the nod here in Houston, and let's hope he finds some rhythm against that Bucs defense. He's got that home crowd support. They're really chanting for him to start, and I think he's got a pretty good chance, so stay tuned on that one.
Yeah, better hope DeAndre Hopkins actually gets to play this week. He's got to pass those concussion protocols before they give him the green light, but we'll keep our eye on that. San Fran, Arizona up next. Colin Kaepernick gets a C. Aside from a prayer to Bolden in the two teams' second matchup of 2014, Kaepernick was held in check by a tough Arizona defense. Likely a similar story here. As far as the runners go, Carlos Hyde, the only one of note, assuming he'll be good to go on Sunday. He's had an assortment of just minor injuries. Hyde is a decent start against an Arizona defense that is tough, but not nearly as stiff against the run as it was last year. Carlos Hyde, for that reason, gets a B grade. Torrey Smith gets a B-, utilized the way he was supposed to be last week by virtue of the game flow, which found San Fran down early and by a lot. He should see plenty of targets in this one. Anquan Bolden gets a B by virtue of the fact that I think the Niners will have to throw in order to keep up with the Cards. Bolden should continue to be targeted heavily. John Brown I'll throw in the mix. Oh, I'm sorry, that's when I get on to the Cardinals. See, I'm back to like 2011 when Anquan Bolden was with the Cardinals here. How about that? We move on to the Cardinals. Carson Palmer gets a B+. Didn't face San Fran last season. He was injured at the time. But the way Palmer's played thus far in 2015, there aren't many quarterbacks I'd start over him, to be quite honest with you. As far as the running game, David Johnson, the talented rookie, gets a B+. The rookie has earned more time on the field by virtue of his potential for dominance. Get off my lawn, Arians agrees reportedly, as you heard in the headlines earlier. I think he'll have himself a nice day against a bottom half run defense. Chris Johnson gets a C+. He does way too much dancing in the backfield for me. Dancing with the Stars is in his near future. I'm not now, nor have I ever been a believer in him in several seasons. He may get the start. He may have one or two decent runs, but he won't help you win your fantasy matchup this week. Mark my word. John Brown, I alluded to a bit ago. He gets a B. Took a back seat to Fitzgerald last week, but will continue to show his stuff here and there, especially when the matchup is tasty, which this one happens to be. Larry Fitzgerald does get an A in this one. The forgotten man. Fitz has ridiculous stats when Palmer is under center. That is the caveat. Unless Palmer is out, Fitzgerald should be in. Start him. Don't think twice. And the tight ends, neither one of which I'm thrilled with this week. So we'll just move on to your next matchup.
Big Ben and company head into St. Louis. We know these guys are on a plane. That's quite a drive in a bus. Fresh Le'Veon Bell bringing in the pain. So let's review this. Just the Pittsburgh roster here in general. If you have a starter on the offense for Pittsburgh, you probably need to start them. They're just becoming an offensive powerhouse. Let me review this. Big Ben. He's getting an A. I'll tell you why. 72% of his passes are completed. That's talent. 353 yards per game. That's talent. As good as the Rams' defense sounds, it's not. Look at the stats. 28th in rush defense and 10th against the pass. Passing's all right, but rush defense, that's where you win, is in the trenches. If the Rams defense just cuts Big Ben's production by 30%, you still have a quarterback who's going to get 250 yards per game and 2 touchdowns. That's going to hurt. Big Ben's getting the A. Antonio Brown, he's always going to be A. That's a no-brainer. Regardless of his coverage, the guy just has a knack for getting open and getting that separation that you need. Do not forget to take D'Angelo Williams out of your lineup. Le'Veon looks to claim his rightful spot here. He's been practicing. It's not because of injury. He's been missing because of suspension. So he's going to lower his head and just bowl all the way through. B+ for him to start, as the Rams defense is going to hit him hard, but he's fresh, so just watch out. Marcus Wheaton, B-, as I think DHB, Darius Hayward-Bay, is going to become the sneaky target for Big Ben. Look at his week last week and expect the same thing out of him. He's going to get the B here. It's a risky choice, but I like it, and that's why we win championships, because we're willing to roll the dice when needed. Heath Miller, he's always an option here at your tight end slot. So Rams pressure, checkdowns are always an option. He's going to get a B start. As great as all of those fantasy points were sounding, not so great on St. Louis's side of the ball. Nick Foles here, he might have a decent shot at some kind of numbers. Pittsburgh's 26th ranked pass defense, but that's assuming Nick Foles has someone to throw it to. So you're going to get a B- out of Nick Foles. He's probably going to get you 252 and a pick. So don't get too excited about that. Gurley's not ready yet. He's getting out there. He's been fully practicing now for 2 weeks, but he is not going to get the bulk of the carries. So just wait on him. Just hold it. Be patient. It's going to be a three-way running back by committee. They're going to get Gurley some touches. He'll get popped one time or two. He's going to come out and sit down. Yeah. Cunningham and Mason, they're both C's here. You never know what's going to happen, but Cunningham is averaging 50 yards per game in the passing side of the ball, so that's something to watch out for. He's catching a lot of passes. The curse of Jared Cook here, obviously, we talked about it last week. You think he's going to do good. He doesn't. You bench him, he does great. He's looking to get some targets here this week, so I'm going to step out on the limb here and give him a B+ in the tight end spot.
No.
Yep, it's going to happen this week. It's going to happen this week. He's going to get some numbers. He's going to get some numbers here. Kenny Britt is getting a C, and Stedman Bailey, never even heard of this guy, but he's going to get a C for someone I don't even know. And
why don't we just give Bozo the Clown a grade at this point?
We might as well. I'm trying to find some kind of positives here in St. Louis's wide receivers, but it's just a bad situation. So the only one, and that's a pass catcher worth a start, obviously Jared Cook.
You spent way too much time on the Rams, dude. Chicago at Seattle. It's mostly Seattle here, so let's begin with the actual Bears you might want to consider. Matt Forte, a C+. Not a great matchup here, despite Forte's heavy usage in the passing game. Depending on who plays at quarterback, I guess it really doesn't matter. Cutler, Clausen, who cares? Seattle will focus much of their attention on the talented back, who will find the road a tough one to hoe this week. Alshon Jeffrey gets a C+. Everyone is getting an automatic downgrade due to the quarterback situation. That includes Eddie Royal. Martellus Bennett would normally be a higher grade, but I give him a B-. Probably the best start of all the Bears' skill position players, sadly. As far as the Seahawks go, Russell Wilson, a B+. Chicago has one of the league's most porous pass defenses, giving up over 27 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position through the first 2 weeks. Wilson will have no problem finding receivers and piling up rushing yards as well. For that reason, Marshawn Lynch is an A start. And again, like Peterson, this will be the week. Beast mode finally arrives after a tough couple of weeks for him. Doug Baldwin gets a B-. Wilson's go-to wide receiver in the Seattle offense. They probably won't need to pass much, but Baldwin stands to benefit if they do. Jimmy Graham, I'm giving him an A. The squeaky wheel will get some grease this week against a Bears secondary that hasn't looked bad against opposing tight ends through 2 games, but hasn't seen a tight end like Graham yet either. What do you have, 2 matchups left, Brian?
Yes, sir, I do. Buffalo, Miami. Rex Ryan and the Buffalo Deer, they're going to get some revenge. They ran their mouth against the Patriots last week, so they're going into Miami, who really needs a jump start. Buffalo's defense going to get a B+ here. Tyrod Taylor, not quite the flash of success from week 1. So we're going to give him a B-, hoping that he can finally find Sammy Watkins and get some momentum out of that. Speaking of, he's not getting off the line. He's not getting separation. It's dangerous. I've been burned by him in the past. He's getting a C+ until they can get their chemistry going. Leading receiver for the Buffalo Bills, Percy Harvin. Are you kidding me? You expect the guy just to go nowhere, but it sounds like he's getting his act together. He's going to get a B, as it appears. He and Tyrod Taylor are the ones that have the rapport together. Robert Woods, he's also getting a C in the passing game. He's averaging 17 yards per catch, but not much else. Number 3 receiver on their Bills is also their running back, LaShawn McCoy. B+ for McCoy, but something to watch, though. Carlos Williams, goal line touches. He has stolen 2 touchdowns right out of McCoy's hands on that goal line. It definitely hurts his owner. Something to watch for. Hopefully it clears up, but it's there to take that workload off of Shady, as he's been kind of the workhorse for a long time now. Tannehill's at home, has not thrown a pick yet. Key phrase, yet. That's likely going to happen this week. Tannehill's going to get a B on his home turf. Lamar Miller, C-. He's showing nothing. 2 yards per carry against a stud run defense who is number 2 at 60 yards per game from the Buffalo Bills. So Miller, no start, obviously. Jarvis Landry continues to be a favorite of Tannehill's. 28% of the targets are going to Jarvis Landry. Plus, he also gets the punt return bonus. He already has 1 touchdown. Let's see if he can do it again here against the Bills special teams. I like him, and so should you. B start for Landry, Rashard Matthews, Jordan Cameron, wide receiver and tight end respectively. Matthews is getting a B minus. Cameron gets the B plus. Jordan Cameron is averaging 19.3 yards per carry as a tight end, or yards per catch. Yards per catch as a tight end. That's insane.
Do you think you can get through Sunday night to Denver, Detroit in 2 minutes or less?
Got it. Peyton Manning's coming off an extended break from last Thursday, which does not spell well for the Lions D. Hope to stabilize in the prime time. Peyton's getting an A here. He bounced back in a ferocious way last week after being down and just looking god-awful in first quarter and half of the second. So bad news. C.J. Anderson, have fun in the backseat, pal. I don't expect him to be the starter for long. C+. Ronnie Hillman's going to get a B. Plenty of receiver work here for Demaryius Thomas. He's going to get an A, but he's been held out of the end zone by Emmanuel Sanders, who is also getting the A start here. Tight end Owen Daniels. Nothing of value, so don't even bother. If you're looking for the tight end to start, it's Eric Ebron. He's got 2 touchdowns, 1 per game this year, showing what he should be, B+. Lions are going to fall behind. They're going to start chucking the ball. So Stafford, if he plays, because of his arm, shoulder, and rib injuries, if he plays, he might pull something coming out of the shower. So watch that injury report on Sunday morning. He's going to get a B. Calvin Johnson, B-. Golden Tate, B-. Reason, injured quarterback, and the Broncos have the number 1 pass defense. So watch for those tight end checkdowns to Ebron. And watch out for those running back flats. Speaking of, you might just want to leave these running backs on the bench. It hurts me to say it, but the Lions have the number 31 rushing offense in what was supposed to be this huge revamp game. If you're going to start him, if you're going to go against me, B- for Abdullah and C for Joink Bell, who has just given the job away with 1.6 yard per carry. Abdullah's is 4.5, and reaching deep, Zach Zenner has more yards per carry than Joink Bell does at this point.
Yikes. Monday night matchup features Kansas City and Green Bay. So we begin on the Chiefs side. Alex Smith, a B-. Green Bay, they've been a very average defensive unit against opposing quarterbacks thus far this season. Smith isn't the quarterback that will suddenly put up 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, even if it was the greatest matchup in the world. But he could be serviceable if he has some garbage time opportunities. Jamal Charles, a B+. The Packers are also very middle of the road against opposing running backs. Charles, of course, a game-breaking guy that could find the end zone at any time. I'm starting him without much hesitation this week. Jeremy Maclin, middling C+ grade, the only wide receiver that warrants any fantasy consideration this week on the KC side of the ball. But I do like Travis Kelce a bit. He'll get a B grade. Decent option this week where KC may have nowhere else to throw to. Packers have been very good against opposing tight ends so far, including shutting down Jimmy Graham last week. The Packers side of the ball. These are all pretty obvious grades. Aaron Rodgers, an A. James Starks will get a C+. Now, no matter what Eddie Lacy's status is for Monday, Starks looks to be the primary ball carrier. Trouble is, the Chiefs are stout up front, currently the number 3 ranked rush defense in the league. This should be an air-it-out game for the Pack, and for that reason, good grades for the receivers. Randall Cobb gets an A. James Jones gets a B. Low targets, but no question Rodgers looks for him in the red zone where he has thrived and then some through 2 weeks. Devontae Adams, I'll throw him in the mix as a C grade. Richard Rodgers, the tight end, a B-. He won't be targeted a lot, but when he is, he's making things happen. He found the end zone down deep last week. He'll have more of those opportunities as the weeks go on. Brian, we move on to our bargain bin picks, the final stretch of this week's 515 Fantasy Show. Let's begin at the quarterback position, Brian. Who is your quarterback this week in the bargain bin?
I mentioned him earlier, Ryan Mallett. He's owned in 2% of the leagues against the Bucs defense. He had 58 passes last week. Regardless of a win or loss, it only comes down to one thing. Touchdowns. He has 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. With those kind of attempts, he's going to get you the yards if DeAndre Hopkins plays. So make sure you watch out for that. But Ryan Mallett, he is going to be my little QB sneak here.
My quarterback this week is Marcus Mariota, rookie, Indianapolis at home. I don't know if anyone else was paying attention to what Ryan Fitzpatrick did to the Colts on Monday, especially once stud corner Vontae Davis went out with an injury. No matter what, I expect Mariota to throw quite a bit in this one, exploiting a weakened Indy defensive backfield. He should also chip in some rushing yards. Mariota, my pick at quarterback. Who's your running back?
Running back, Lance Dunbar. For your PPR guys out there, watch for Lance Dunbar. Week 1, he caught 8 passes for 70 yards. Whedon's going to be checking it down. Lance Dunbar lines up in the spread offense. Watch for it. Check down happy. PPR, Lance Dunbar. He's going to make it happen this week.
Kind of like that pick from you. My pick, probably a
One in
little
a
more
million you
obvious
like.
than yours. Yours is more of like an under the radar. Mine is Isaiah Crowell against the Oakland Raiders at home. And though the Raiders have certainly improved on defense, this should be a run-heavy game plan from Mike Pettin and company at home. Crowell has stepped out a bit from rookie Duke Johnson in the committee. He should see the bulk of the early down action in a game that should be close. Isaiah Crowell, my bargain bin running back. How about your receiver?
My receiver, it was Travis Benjamin with Manziel in. However, they made that announcement. So I'm going to throw you a curveball here. I'm going to give you a tight end for those wide receiver tight end flex spots. Crockett Gilmore. Talked about him in my matchups. This guy, 7 catches on 10 targets, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Watch for the Ravens to get him involved again. The one thing that's not happening that was last year is those passes to Forsett. They seem to be going to Crockett Gilmore. Watch out for it.
My receiver this week is Leonard Hankerson, Atlanta.
Woo!
At Dallas. Forget Roddy White, okay? He's clearly not Roddy White any longer. Roddy White is Leonard Hankerson. Leonard Hankerson is Roddy White. Any questions?
Who's on first?
No, what's on second?
Ah, good point.
I don't know, is on third. I mean,
We
good
don't have
grief.
time for this.
Well, we do have time for a bonus question I wanted to ask Brian. As you may realize, Le'Veon Bell returns from suspension for the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. They're taking on the St. Louis Rams. Now, the St. Louis Rams are a relatively tough defense, but they have given up some big plays to running backs. Le'Veon Bell in his first action, do you think he'll see 20 touches or more in this game?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier. He was serving a suspension for what he did. He wasn't out because of injury. He's been practicing, he's been conditioning, and he is ready to go. This is not his week 3. This is his week 1. So treat this start as this is week 1 out of the box for him. He is going to come guns a-blazing, and he is going to make them pay. I am all in here on Le'Veon Bell.
I love Le'Veon Bell, but I'll tell you something. The thing that muddies this up for me a bit is the success that D'Angelo Williams had through 2 weeks with this team. They obviously need to get him some touches. I'm just wondering how many touches he'll get.
Well, it could come down to just overall success. If Le'Veon Bell's having a great day, that kind of proves it wasn't D'Angelo Williams. It's what the team is doing. Because if you think about it, they can't drop that extra man down in the box with Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Wheaton, and everybody else going haywire. So they have to take that extra person out of the box and put him back into pass coverage. So it just creates a lot of opportunities for the tight end and running back position in Pittsburgh's offense. And at this point, I don't think it really matters who you have back there.
We hope you've enjoyed the 515 Fantasy Football Show. Those of you that have already been following us on iTunes and Stitcher, you can get the show there on a weekly basis. New listeners that have tuned in to the all-new 1350 ESPN Radio in Des Moines, we appreciate you tuning into our show. Again, you can find us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. We're always happy to answer your questions, concerns, trades, anything you want to talk about fantasy related. Brian and I are more than happy to do it. We've got lots of experience under our belts, and we're here to help you win a fantasy championship. Real quick, Brian, anything to add?
It's been a treat. Thank you to everyone. This is a great opportunity. Make sure you leave us feedback. Email the station. There's multiple ways to get a hold of us. Email, social media, iTunes, Stitcher. Leave us a rating. It helps us make our program better and helps us help you win those championships. So reach out, tell us how we're doing, let other people know how we're doing, spread the word.
Until next time, for Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall, and this is the 515 Fantasy Football Show.